Good evening. It's January 28th, 2019. This is the Sutton School Committee. Call the meeting to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business is the Citizens Forum. Seeing none. We'll move along to the consent agenda, the minutes from January 17th, the bill schedules from January 17th and January 24th, and I believe, Paul, you have to abstain from the minutes. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item is the Vision Committee's recommendations for the high school. Ms. McCarthy?
Good evening. So these recommendations I shared with you, I believe, back in the fall, but we're now at the point where we need to update our program of studies as well as our student handbook. So we're looking to the school committee to sort of review them one more time, and then give us their okay to move forward. So I won't spend a lot of time on these because, again, like I said, we did go over them in the fall, but feel free to ask any questions. Our first recommendation, and probably the most significant one, is that we're going to be changing our graduation requirements. Instead of requiring students, as they currently are, to take 4 years of social studies and 4 years of science, they'll only have to take 3 years of science and 3 years of social studies. Students who want a more rigorous course load are free to do that, but it also allows students to specialize. So if you're Ted McCarthy and you prefer social sciences, you can double up on AP US Government and additional social studies electives. Or if you are Kathleen Fleming and you're a science person, you can double up on science electives. It just allows us, we believe that it's going to allow students to better tailor their academic program to their individual interests. In speaking with colleges and in our own research, there's nothing that says that if I take 2 meaningful social studies classes, that's going to disadvantage me from someone who's applying with 2 science classes, particularly if I'm just applying to a liberal arts school or humanities program. Obviously, if I'm applying to RPI, then I'm going to want to load up on the maths and the sciences, but this still allows kids to make that choice.
No change in the total number of credits to graduate.
Correct. The second piece that we're moving into next year is the creation of more half-year courses. With our schedule, we're happy with the schedule as it's been for the past couple of years, but currently it is a little rigid. Most of our elective courses are full-year courses, which means a student is locked into that class for the entire year. We're trying to maximize our staff and maximize the opportunities for our kids by turning some of our full-year electives, shaving them into half-year electives, and then adding new additional half-year electives as well. So that would mean that as a student, instead of taking my 5 cores, English, math, science, social studies, foreign language, and then only 2 classes, I could potentially now take 4 additional classes in electives, and again, in an area of my choosing. We have we're adding 2 additional graduation requirements. The first one is a financial wellness requirement. When we surveyed the students and staff and parents, it was easily the #1 most requested course. It fits strongly into what we believe we should be providing our kids. The financial wellness course will not just be personal finance, but we'll also talk to kids about student debt, the first steps out of the house when they're an adult, and how to make sense of money, which many of us never had that conversation with our own parents. So we believe by giving them sort of the beginning language around that and some beginning concepts, they can make more informed choices as they go forward. Civics is actually, the state just revamped their social studies requirements, and civics is something that they're looking to see placed throughout the social studies curriculum, starting, I believe, not next year, but the year after. It's actually going to be the required full-year 8th grade course. At the high school level, what we're looking to do is make sure the kids enter into the world as informed citizens, knowing their rights and knowing how to be an active participant in democracy, like you folks do every other Monday, for example. So the course will transform a little bit. We currently, our seniors take a full-year government course, and that course will transition into a half-year civics course with more of a focus on active citizenship and less on the nuts and bolts, which we will cover in U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2, and again, as I mentioned, in the 8th grade course, which currently is a world history course, and will shift more into a fundamentals of civics course. Our fourth change is changing and modifying of our physical education requirement. The Mass law requires that physical education shall be taught as a required subject in all grades for all students in public schools. So we are going to continue to meet that standard. However, very few schools do meet that standard. We're just going to be more creative in how we meet that standard. So students who participate in a MIAA sport through the high school, whether it's JV or varsity, if they complete that sport in good standing, that could count as their physical education graduation requirement. Students can still take physical education as an elective, and they can take it all 4 years if they like. And as a matter of fact, when we surveyed the students to see what courses they were interested in taking, lots of kids wanted that movement break during the day. So phys ed will continue to be a half-year elective that kids can opt to take. For all students, just to make sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and I know other schools in the area do this as well, once or twice a year, we'll take the entire class out and give them a activity day to make sure that we're meeting the physical education requirements, so no one can say that we're not following the law. But again, we believe that by allowing kids who are really overworked and overpacked with time and schedule, we have kids who are playing basketball right now, and then they're going to go home and they're going to do 4 hours of homework. If we give them more freedom in their schedule, so they have to take one less graduation requirement as a standard course, that might open up some things that gives them some more freedom in their schedule.
Ted, I have a question on that.
Absolutely.
So how are we going to ensure that we are still complying with the Mass General laws to make sure that this physical education requirement being taught is met? I mean, playing a sport is one thing, but you're coached, you're not taught. How do we?
Well, like I mentioned, what we're anticipating right now is at least once or twice a year, taking groups of ninth graders to make sure all of the ninth graders have an hour of physical education that is structured versus a free-for-all. And then that will meet the requirement, because the law actually doesn't stipulate anything about time.
Right.
And so that's how schools like BVT get around this particular issue, is they'll take the kids out to the track and have them walk around the track. So we wouldn't do it quite like that, but something along the same lines, and we believe it's what's in the best interest for the kids. Next graduation requirement that will start, I'll go back to that in a second, the senior capstone graduation requirement. So one of the things that we've noticed with our internship program and the presentation that all the seniors make at the end of their high school career, essentially, is what a powerful experience that is for them to be out and presenting what they've learned and what they know to a wider audience, and have to present in a public and professional way. So we believe that should be required of all of our students, whether or not they are participating in the internship program, even though this year, again, we're anticipating about 80% of our seniors to participate in the internship program. So most of them will meet this graduation requirement through the internship program, but we want to make sure that all kids have that opportunity. So last week, we had our innovations class. They did their midterm presentations, and they presented to about, Mr. Friend, would you say there were about 200 people in the audience for each of those?
Yes.
About 200 of their peers, maybe another 10 teachers. The middle school came and brought their students, and several middle school teachers came. And that was, again, a meaningful presentation that they had to prepare for, and it demonstrated that they could present information in a professional way at a level that's going to help them get ahead in the world. So we want to make sure every single kid walks out of Sutton High School with that skill. So if you don't take the senior internship, then we will come up with a different way for you to deliver that presentation. And we'll be starting this as well as the financial wellness graduation requirement with the class of 2022. So that gives us 3 years on how to make it operational for those younger kids. And then the last recommendation, and this is something that we'll be piloting, we plan to pilot at the end of February and the beginning of March, is the creation of a flex block of time. One of the things that we consistently hear from our kids is that they need help managing time, and that with, again, the number of classes, extracurricular activities, clubs, babysitting for mom and dad, going to work, there's just not enough time in the day to get everything they need to get done. So we are going to create, right now we currently have an advisory that meets on Wednesdays. And we are going to just basically expand that to every day of the week, shorten it a little bit. And that will give kids about a half an hour every day to stay after, during the school day, they can get extra help in math class, make up a test in history class, go get some clarifying comments from my English teacher on my essay, sit and relax for half an hour and take a break, check in with my club advisor to see when the next meeting is. So this time, while it may seem unstructured, it's not unstructured at all. It's actually helping our kids modulate their own time, learn this, and a very important skill when they leave to go off to college or into the adult world. And there'll be adults there to help guide them, but also give them the flexibility and the freedom so they can make the choices themselves, so that they can reduce a little bit of stress in their day. Uxbridge down the road has something very similar, and when we went to go visit their program, we actually did a site visit during their flex period, and Mr. Rubin, their principal, said that the nice corollary benefit to the flex period was that their D's and F's dropped significantly, because the very kids who have a trouble staying after school to get extra help are the kids who can't get rides or maybe just lack the motivation at 2 o'clock to just turn around and go back into math class. Now there's a half an hour in the day where they can make up that test, fix that homework, and get the extra help that they need. They feel more successful during the day. Success breeds success. Now they're more likely to be successful in math class and less likely to get the D and the F in the first place. So that's the part of this that I'm most excited about, because I feel like it's going to be when kids start to realize how powerful it can be, it'll really be a game changer.
So would everybody be doing the flex time at the same time?
Yep. The entire high school, basically what will happen is during their second period, kids will give a starting point for what they think they're going to do. Hey, I'm going to go down to the cafeteria, get a snack, and then just hang out. Great. Hey, I'm going to go to Mr. Stamos' class to make up my history test. Great. Hey, I'm going to go do, right? But then, once I've gotten my snack, maybe I want to go check in with Mr. Marcucci on my essay, just like they'll have to do in a couple of years in college. So if kids are struggling academically, their time becomes a little bit more structured. So if I have below a 70 in a class, and I'm failing Miss Erickson's English class, Miss Erickson say to me, hey, I have academic overtime today, I'm going to see you in class at 9:15. And then the kid will know to come back and go see Miss Erickson to get caught up in her class.
Where do these minutes come from?
The minutes come from the existing classes, as well as on advisory day, the advisory period that we already have built in. Advisory is actually part of it. We just went through NEASC. They want advisory all the time. We feel that the advisory that we currently have works, and we're just expanding it so that we can use it a little bit more effectively. Another piece of this will be that parents will, once this gets, hopefully if it gets approved, we can be able to share with parents that, hey, there's a half an hour every single day that your kid can get extra help. And I know as a parent, I remember my son, he was in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. If I had known that there was a half an hour built into my son's day for him to get extra help, that would have been a win for me. Because, again, a lot of the excuses go away, and it's just a matter of moving from, Ms. Multazari's room to Mr. Marcucci's room.
Seniors wouldn't have the right to leave the building.
No, it's not, this flex period is not their open campus period. And again, seniors are ones who need to get extra help, need to make up tests. They'll use the time effectively as well.
And no impact to time and learning, or just?
Well, we consider it time on learning because you're teaching kids an important life skill, time management. Again, that's what Uxbridge has been doing for a couple of years, and no one has said that what they're doing is incorrect. And I believe strongly that time management is a skill that the kids desperately need.
So this is drawing minutes off of the current class schedules, or the
Yes.
current face-to-face class time?
Right, so I think the classes, if I'm correct, I don't have it right, I don't have that piece right in front of me, but I believe classes currently are 56, and they're going to go to 51. And that is it. The other pieces that came out of the Vision Committee were things to work on going forward. But I think we have enough on our plate for the next few years to try things out, tweak them if needed, and make them work for the kids. Any questions?
Would you like to make a motion?
I move to approve the Vision Committee's recommendations for high school as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just say, I think that this represents a lot of really interesting changes in trying to make the high school environment more conducive to period and time, and
Here, here.
promotes the kids' education. Keep trying stuff. It's great.
And I'll say I had the opportunity to talk to a couple 8th grade parents, and they had mentioned about the kids taking surveys, and they seem very excited about it. So
anything that gets the kids excited about education, that's what we're looking for. I was gonna ask you about, the kids doing sports and deciding not to do gym. I know when I think of my own kids, they wanna run around and do sports as much as they can, so I'm not surprised by that, but I'm glad that we're at least thinking of it, so. thank you.
I'll be curious to see how many kids use the sports waiver as their graduation requirement. I bet you 80% of those kids, 80% of our athletes will take phys ed during the day anyway.
The nice thing that I'm excited about is it's an option, and you're gonna have kids that have a tough decision one year where there's a great elective, and they really wanna take it, and that's maybe that tough decision that comes in, so the fact that we're doing that is great, thank you.
I didn't think of it while you were speaking, but is that fall sport cover the whole year? Okay, cool.
And a lot of these ideas come from the students that participated in, and the parents that participated in the vision committee?
Yeah, I would say the number one piece of feedback that they gave to us is, how do I as a student get control over more of my school day? And so from that sort of operating principle, the rest of them follow. We change the graduation requirements, we add more electives, we give them more opportunity in phys ed. We just provide more pathways that can be more uniquely tailored to individual kids, rather than more of a factory model education, which is what we've had for a while. So yeah, these are all, the one piece that I would say that the faculty weighed in a little bit more heavily on was the capstone graduation requirement. Just because we hear from the seniors or the graduates who come back who say the number one thing that they wish they had spent more time on is public speaking. And then we see the impact of that senior presentation. So for us, it was sort of like, okay, well, if we know we want them to get to there, we need to backfill it, start doing more public speaking opportunities for kids when they're younger. So that when they walk across that stage, we're like, you know what, that kid's gonna be able to present themselves in any situation with confidence in a professional way, and he's gonna get himself a foot in the door. So that's the goal.
So does the internship fair count as that requirement? Okay. 'cause
As long as they
that's-
successfully complete it.
Yeah, and that's been tremendous the last few years to go and see the kids presenting on behalf of what they've learned and their experiences, so excellent.
And budget impact for that.
Mr. Friend has agreed to give the high school an additional $100,000 in the budget,
Zero budget.
which is great. No, there is no budget impact right now. I would say the math department's in the process of developing the financial wellness curriculum. But again, that's not going to be a graduation requirement for 3 years. We're hoping to run a few sections of it next year. As we look to create new classes and new opportunities, obviously, if we need a textbook or material, that would have a budget impact.
Going to quarter-length classes with the teacher requirements, you won't find that you're in need of more staff in order to accommodate that.
No, I mean, I think Mr. Friend has been pretty clear that we're not getting, 5 more staff, as great as that would be. So for example, if I'm a teacher, we try to keep whenever possible teachers to 3 preps. That's what's in the contract. So I might have two preps of one course, 2 preps of another course, and then my elective period, the first half of the year might be one elective, the second half of the year might be a different elective. Both halves of the year, I have only 3 preps. So that'll be a change in practice for the staff. I actually spoke to them today about supporting them about, like, if they need, if we can find release time or time during professional development for them to work on creating curriculum or sort of modifying existing curriculum for existing courses, to take advantage of that, because it is going to be different. And so everyone, the kids are going to need to get used to it, and so are the teachers. But nobody's balking, no one's saying this is a bad idea. So I think we have people motivated to try something different.
You wouldn't see it long-term impacting after-school time that teachers are there. The fact that they have the free time during the day wouldn't impact whether they're having office hours after.
I think that the kids who stay after school right now will continue to stay after school. I think the biggest group that we're going to get with that half an hour are the kids who can't or may currently lack the motivation to stay. I think those are the kids we're going to get in that half an hour. The student who wants to make sure that their 95 turns into a 99, they're staying after school anyway, more's the pity. But I think we'll still always have kids after school.
Terrific. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's great.
Next item is the public hearing for the fiscal year 2020 school budget. I move to open the public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 school budget, and this is a roll call vote.
Offside.
Jerome, I.
Edwards, aye. Okay, I'm just reading up.
I make a motion to
Script I
open,
was given.
open the public hearing of the fiscal year 20 school budget, 2020.
Second.
Okay, let's do that roll call vote.
All right.
Offside.
Jerome, I.
Edwards, aye.
Hold on, Brett and I.
Clark, aye.
Did we lose our Nancy?
Yeah, we did, and we're just waiting, we're getting Kyle so that we can have our PowerPoint. But let me begin. You know, what we did this year is we formed a vision committee, which was made up of parents, staff members, community members, and students. And this committee met in the fall to talk about creative ways to move our district forward. The best example is what you heard tonight from that vision committee. A lot of great ideas came out of that, and we're able to make some significant changes at no cost, no additional cost to the district, with moving some things around. Something else that I think is very, very important is the sharing of personnel between the middle and high school. As an example, Mr. DeZago, Adam DeZago, who teaches graphic design in our high school, is going to go to the middle school and do an elective. I'm just killing time here for the PowerPoint to come up, and so we have the PowerPoint in front of folks. Kyle, who works for us, is on the planning board, so we're trying to sneak him down here.
Format-wise, for this, as a public hearing, you'll do his presentation and open up for discussion. Members, it's an open public hearing. Members could come up.
Somebody's presenting and he's.
Not know why. Come on in. Here's the budget.
No, I already asked her.
This is
I already asked her. I'm sorry. Can you shut it off? He said just to hit that. What if I do? Oh, let's show him what you have. It's yours. You have to do it.
There we go.
Die.
Thank you, Di.
Okay.
Is this a problem for you folks from here?
Sorry.
I know. Is that a problem?
Okay, sorry.
I can't see in the dark. Next slide, please. Can you get that stuff out of the corner there? So, the Vision Committee and the District Learning Team, what we focused on with the Simonian Center Early Learning Center, what came out of that group was the recognition that we need smaller class sizes across grades K to 5. Part of the reason is that every year we move elementary staff around from different grade levels to marry up with the incoming class sizes, which causes disruption on the different teams at each grade level. The other thing that we talked about, which is a concern, I think, with most folks in our society today, is social emotional well-being. So that's another focus that we have going forward in the lower grades. And then finally, we want to make sure that all of our special needs staff and all of our staff address critical reading skills in the lower grades. the better our students are prepared to read in the lower grades, the better prepared they will be for middle and high school. In the middle school, what came out of it again was personal health, creating more opportunities for students to explore their own interests in the middle school, was what came out of the middle school. And at the high school, you heard what Mr. McCarthy had to say today. So this budget listened to that vision committee, and what we're proposing is to add a half-time preschool teaching position and 2 full-time K-5 teachers in the low grades. Now, I just want to make one correction. We haven't made this change yet because this is what we've presented already to you. But we're doing the preschool screening right now, and as it turns out, it doesn't look like we're going to need this half-time position. So that is something that, as we move through the process, if it's determined that we'll be able to cut that additional half-time position. But by having 2 additional elementary school teachers in K-5, that means all but 1 grade will have 5 teachers, which will minimize the amount of moving around of staff. In the middle school and the high school, these are no-cost options. So for 7th and 8th graders, or mainly 8th graders, but there'll be some choice for 7th graders, they'll have options on what they can choose to as electives between physical education, art, music, graphic arts, STEM. As I mentioned, Mr. DeZago will be teaching a graphic arts class in the middle school, so we're going to be sharing personnel. We're also going to be offering an innovation course, like the innovation course at the high school.
Just so for people that are watching, what STEM is again?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we're going to, which is the buzzword in our field. But the innovation course, we feel, has been so successful at the high school in the first year, and obviously bringing it down to the lower grades. So kids that are 12 and 13 years old can start looking at their future and saying, I'm interested in this. I want to learn about this. I'm going to design my own self-study. It's an option. It's not required, but it'll be available to our middle school students. And finally, Mr. McCarthy talked about the high school. Oh, by the way, the middle school will also have a flex block. And I am a little nervous about the middle school flex block, but what I said with the vision committee the other evening is that we don't want to not do something because a handful of kids might misbehave. We should deal with the misbehavior as a separate issue, and kids can learn from that. But we want kids to develop a sense of independence, the ability to go and ask for help when they need help, or just simply take a break during the day. This is going to happen in the morning in the middle school. But remember, currently in our middle school, kids come to school, they start school at 7:30. Between every class, they have a 3 or 4 minute break. They have a 22-minute lunch. There is no break in the day. That is not healthy, so we hope that this will address. So the child who was like me, who needs to shoot baskets at lunch for 20 minutes, can go and shoot baskets at lunch for 20 minutes. The student who needs to make up a test can make up a test or meet with a teacher for extra help. This is especially important in middle school where kids don't have driver's licenses, they're younger, parents might have jobs and they can't pick their child up after school, so this gives those students an opportunity to do that.
Excuse me, Ted, is that going to also be implemented in February, March this coming year, like the high
It's
school?
going to be a trial at the high school, and they're going to try it at the middle school as well. It's not going to be for the remainder of this year. They just want to try it for a week, work out some of the bugs. The only other thing I want to mention at the high school is that we will be offering an engineering program next year. One of our science teachers is getting licensed to be a manufacturer engineering instructor, and so we will be offering manufacturing engineering next year at our high school.
That's great.
We'll start out with certification 1, and then we'll build on that, add certification 2, and continue the process. Mr. McCarthy mentioned that to you before. And then finally, the other position that we think is vital to coordinate all of these initiatives is a curriculum director position. So that is in this budget as well. And that will be someone who will coordinate curriculum, manage all of our testing, all of our state mandatory testing, the MCAS test. Currently, when we do this exam, we tie up our principals into their office during MCAS testing. So this person would assume those responsibilities, They would also write all of our grants, and they would also provide all professional development within the district. We think that's a crucial role as we move into the 21st century. We're in the 21st century. We're 20% through. Everything you heard tonight about what's happening in the high school, we need to be building in the lower grades, and we need to be building in the lower grades and have continuity of instruction across the board. So now we get to the nuts and bolts of the budget. So the first line is salaries. 80% of our budget is salaries. This is the biggest increase because we've added a couple of positions and we have contractual obligations. And so this budget has moved from $13,500,000 to $14,318,000, or a $764,000 increase. Now, we note here that so it's really going to be two positions, but I mentioned two teaching positions and a curriculum director position. A teacher is retiring in the middle school. A special needs teacher is retiring in the middle school. Instead of replacing that position, we've coordinated all of our special education staff 6 through 12, and we're able to cover all of those responsibilities with existing staff, which will give us the money to use to hire a teacher in the lower grade. So we're using our money much more wisely, and the coordination of the middle high school staff is going to be vital going forward if we want to add no programming into our school district. Transportation has gone up $60,000 over last year. That is simple, the contract with AA Transportation. Facilities and utilities. We actually have a decrease from $974,000 to $858,000, a $116,000 decrease. The bulk of that decrease is in electricity. Because of net metering and our two solar arrays on our roof, we were able to save approximately $75,000. We also went through our maintenance budget and found that when we looked at the 3-year comparison, we had over budgeted for supplies and materials to run the school. So we're able to trim those budgets back to an appropriate level. Next, special education out-of-district tuitions. At this moment in time, and I want to make it clear, it's at this moment in time, we're looking at a budget decrease from $920,000 to $861,000, a $57,000 decrease. But I will point out that if you add just one out-of-district placement between now and the start of school next year, that will go from a 7% decrease to an increase in the budget. So that is the most volatile line in our entire school budget. And then finally, there's a pool of athletics, legal supplies, technology, and miscellaneous of $1 million. And we're able to trim that back to $959,000, or a $46,000 decrease. We were able to decrease athletics by $30,000. That was mainly, we looked at the coaches line, we looked at officials, we looked at supplies and materials, and we looked at athletic other, and we looked at the 3-year trend. We were able to decrease those lines in total of $30,000. We also decreased supplies. This is office supplies and classroom supplies by $9,000. We decreased technology by $6,000 and $2,000 in legal. At this point in time, this budget is a 3% increase over the previous year, or $608,000. To come in January, add two new positions, and to be at 3%, I think is a very appropriate and very responsible budget. Now, what's interesting when we did this slide, we know this to be true. In education, 80%, in pretty much every school district, approximately 80% of your budget is salaries. It's a people business. But these other 4 categories all came out of 5%. And if you look at the numbers, but some were 4.7%, some were 5.3%, and they all rounded to 5%. So this is just a visual to show people that this is a human business And we really do not have, in truth, a lot of discretionary spending. We have actually very little discretionary spending. Revenue. So this year we budgeted 1.6, almost $1.7 million out of grants and revolving. Next year we will have $1,614,000, or a decrease of $54,000. That decreases our Title I grant. The Title I grant's a federal grant, and it's based on your poverty level. And so last year, our poverty level in Sutton dropped below 5%, and so we lost $54,000 in our Title I grant, which was a major hit to our budget. Chapter 70, the governor just came out, unfortunately, with his budget, and they made a big splash in the paper talking about how they're going to spend over the course of the next 7 years, $1 billion increase in Chapter 70 money. But very, 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 very little of that money will come to Sutton. The governor's budget has us getting $20 per pupil, which is $26,000. We will have our state legislators here at our next meeting. We can ask them questions. Generally speaking, I think what we'll see is that'll probably go to $30, but they also increased money in circuit breaker, which is the special education fund. So I would say that we're pretty safe at $50,000 between circuit breaker increase and in Chapter 70, but we're going to have to wait until June to find out what that number actually is. And then finally, the town, Jim Smith is informed me that he believes that he will be able to provide $400,000 in local money to support the school district, from $10,207,000 to $10,607,000. I'd like to point out that what makes up the Ed Reform Act law around funding is the combination of Chapter 70 funding and local contribution. And so Sutton is deemed a wealthy community, so obviously you see that the town provides double the amount of money that Chapter 70. If you go to a more impoverished town, you will see those actual numbers reversed. So again, with the loss of the Title I grant, you can see that total revenue will increase by approximately $400,000 next year. Next are our revolving accounts that we use toward the budget and to forecast out where we'll be. The two main funding sources, actually there's several main funding sources, but school choice is a major funding source for our operating budget. So the beginning balance this year was just under $800,000. The school committee allocated $459,000 out of school choice to go to pay for our operating budget this year. We anticipate a receivable of approximately $300,000. Will be probably slightly more than that. And based on the last 4 years of unexpended funds out of individual line items like electricity, we anticipate that in this number at the end, $937,000 would be money that we do not expend out of the $459,000 that we allocated out of school choice. So as an example, in all likelihood, we'll have $75,000 remaining in electricity at the end of this year. The great part about this is that keeping this money in school choice doesn't make us at the end of the year like many districts do and they just spend money. We use this money as a more like a free cash account for the school system. And so come June, when we have to make final budget decisions, we're going to have to look at what that budget projection will be to determine what we're able to fund in this year's budget. We will bring to the committee in May and June projections of using money over the next 4 or 5 years to see how long some of these revolving accounts can last if we choose to go forward with some of the positions that we recommend. Preschool tuition, this is the tuition account that we charge for parents who take advantage of our preschool program. And we have a beginning balance of $21,000. We allocate $55,000 from the budget, and we anticipate $55,000 of revenue from parents or of children who participate in our preschool program. Student activities, that is our sports fees, and we cover that under our coaches line. But our beginning balance was $96,000. We allocated $141,000. We anticipate approximately $145,000 in revenue, which will leave us with a balance of just under $100,000. Electricity, we run an aftercare program in our school district. The beginning balance at the start of this year was $156,000, almost $157,000. We allocate $130,000 to pay for electricity in our early learning center in elementary school. Projected expenses of $282,000. That's the money we pay our staff to run the aftercare program. We anticipate projected income of $410,000 and a remaining balance of $155,000 at the end of the year. Circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is a special education account. And the way this works is the state sets a rate. And so it's 4 times the average per pupil cost. So last year I believe it was $45,000, but I'm not 100%. So the state says the first $45,000, the school system owns that. Any amount of money above that, both in out-of-district placement or in-district placement, we get reimbursed a portion of that spending. So to give you an idea, if you follow along, now this $429,500, if we follow over to our projected income, that is based on last year's special. So at the end of every year, we do our circuit breaker report from the previous year. So this $429,000 that we're receiving in projected income came from last year's report that we did for circuit breaker. So our beginning balance was $130,000. We allocated $489,000, and we allocate all of that to out-of-district placements. We anticipate a $429,000 projected income, which will leave us with $70,000. Now, it's possible, and that's why I want to wait till June to make any final determinations on cuts, is there's potential that there'll be more money at the end of this year. If nothing changed this year, there would be more money remaining in that line item. But as I said, it's the most volatile line item that we have. Parking fees, we use parking fees for grounds. So these are the fees that we charge students to park in our parking lots, and that money has to be used for around the parking lot areas. And so we have a balance of $55,000. We allocated $9,000. This year we did a one-time expense out of this to fix the back driveway, if you remember, from the wastewater treatment plant. We anticipate a revenue of $11,000, which leaves us a balance of $44,000 out of that account. So we're repairing fields, salt for our clearing the driveways, repairs to the trucks, so that we have our parking lots clear. That's how we use that money. Bus fees, this is the fees that we charge. For transportation, we charge $180 per student in grades 7 through 12. We have a beginning balance of $52,000. We allocate $45,000. We anticipate revenue of $50,000, which leaves us with a balance of $57,000. And athletic revolving, these are to pay our game workers. We had a beginning balance of $26,000. We allocate $11,000. We are projecting $3,000 in expenses. We anticipate $6,000 in gate receipts this year, which will leave us with an $18,000 balance. Down below, I think it's important for the community to know that our cafeteria revolving account began the year with $134,000. We have total expenses of over $410,000, total revenue of $410,000. So it will remain at about $134,000. Now, our cafeteria is fully self-sustaining. It does not affect our operating budget $1. It's important to keep a nice, healthy balance in this revolving account, because if a piece of equipment breaks in the cafeteria, say a mixer that costs $30,000, that's where that comes from, so that it doesn't affect our operating budget. Summer camp, we run a summer camp program. Our beginning balance was $52,000 this year. We have expenses of $30,000. And part of that was they bought some sports equipment for that. The bulk of that is to pay the coaches and the students that run the summer camps. We project a income of approximately $30,000, and that'll leave us a healthy balance of $48,000. Again, programs like this, what you have to do with any type of revolving account, I just can't take that money and apply it to pay for a teacher. I think that's important for the community to know. We can buy sports equipment with this money. We can pay to fertilize fields. We can do things like that with this money. And then building use, this is for like dance studios that come in and use our auditorium. We had built up that balance to $52,000 this year. However, the committee authorized that we redo our intercom system and our alarm system at the high school. And that's why you see the $40,000 projected expenses this year. I would say conservatively we'll bring in $15,000. Diane does a great job of booking all of these activities. And so at the end of the year, we'll have $26,900. This money can be used for anything, though. So if something happens and we need to fix some chairs in the auditorium or something in the gymnasium, that's what this money is used for. As I said earlier, our Title I grant 2 years ago was $93,000. This year it's $44,000. The 262 grant is the IDEA grant for $17,000. This is strictly used for transportation for special education. It's an entitlement grant. We get this grant. It's used for transportation. And then finally, our special education entitlement grant through the federal government, the 240 grant. This year, our grant was, as you see here, $31,619. What we've seen over the course of every year, we generally get like $2,000 more in this account. This is also used exclusively for out-of-district placements. And the reason why we do that, first of all, it's simpler to do that. But if you use this line to pay for salaries, so say you paid teachers under this line, the state would take an additional 11% in retirement funds. So we don't want to do that. I mean, that would be a big hit. So we just allocate those resources to out-of-district placements. When you get down to the bottom line, the projected budget in 2020 that we are recommending that the school committee adopt is $17,923,443. Our projected revenue is $17,711, which would leave us a gap of $212,000. As I said earlier, it looks like that halftime preschool position, even though I'm going to ask you to vote this number, it looks like that preschool position will go away, which will drop this gap down to $180,000. Historically, to be at this point in January is a great thing for us. With the increase of 2 teachers at the lower grades and potential a curriculum director position, we're in very good shape at this point in the budget season. But what I'm going to ask the committee, and I've already talked to Jim Smith about this, and what I'm going to recommend to the FinCom, is that what we too often do is we cut the budget. We say, oh, we get this gap, we get it. Nancy and I have already identified ways to trim further within the budget. We're prepared to find other savings. What I'd like to do is wait till May and June. We have full, clear picture of revenues, and then we'll come back to the committee, show our trends with our revolving accounts over the next 4 or 5 years and how they'll be sustainable. Because I think in order for us to move forward as a school district, we need to hire these 2 teachers at the lower grades. We need a curriculum director so that we move our district forward into the 21st century. So questions from the committee or parents, they can also ask questions as well. This is a public forum.
I think, as always, we note this is available on the school website, and it's got pages at the end of the presentation that offer some additional numbers in regards to enrollment, acronyms that we use, and certain explanations for some of the terms, so.
Also, online, there is anybody can go online, you can look and we have a 3-year comparison document. So, and if you have any questions for me, 3-year comparison document basically shows you the past 3 years of what was actually spent and what was actually budgeted. So you were able to go in, we're very transparent with our budget, we have nothing to hide. That's a very good document to look at, so when I talked about the cuts we've made, you'll be able to go in and say, well, that makes sense because over the last 3 years, there was money remaining in these accounts. There's also, right here that we handed out, which is not a detailed budget, but it's a line-by-line budget. We also have available, if community members would like, you can also view our budget by school. And certainly any parent or any community member that would like to further explanations, they can certainly reach out to my office and we will answer any individual question that any community member has.
Do I ask questions from the floor, or do I identify myself?
Yeah, you can come right up.
Thank you. Brian Johnson, 45 Barnett Road. I just have a question, if there could be further clarity on the decrease in $30,000 in athletics. That's an awful lot of coaches and athletic tape. So I just want to make sure, I know there's some open financial impacts to discuss and have reviewed on February 4th. So I just want to make sure that there's an understanding here of what's happening amongst the community and, some clarity on that.
What's in the budget right now is football as it exists right now. There is no change to our athletic budget. We would offer the same number of sports in this current budget as it exists. So if after next week, if the same program ran next year, it's fully funded in the budget as when you look at it. If we go with the Millbury option, then we would make adjustments to the budget because it would be savings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have questions from the? I have one question. Please, come on up.
I'd also like to thank the parents that did come tonight.
Yeah.
I think it's the more parents that can be here to ask questions of us, the more eyes that look at this, the better. So thank you.
My name is Rosalind Black. I'm just up to talk about the additional teachers being sent to the lower grades. I know myself, not personally having children in the lower grades anymore, but have gone through it because my daughter's in 3rd grade. The class sizes are kind of, can turn into an extreme scenario. And what I mean by that is if they're inclusion classes, some kids can get lost. And it doesn't really give a good atmosphere for the small children to get the attention that they need, not necessarily someone hovering over them, but just in a classroom environment, it's not really healthy or cohesive to learning. So I think that that's a great, I know a few other moms and family members agree, and I think it's kind of an important step for the school system.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was an important one for us. We didn't like the fact that it kept shifting and having teachers move, so that was one of our priorities over the last few years that we looked at and said we'd love to have more stability down there, and I'd rather have a class with 17 kids than 27. So, thank you.
So, with that said, the difference with the two teachers, the average class size, if we added the two teachers, would range between 19 and 22 and 23. Without those two teachers, the average class size will range from 21 to 25. Now, I taught 4th and 5th grade mainly in my career as a teacher in the city of Worcester. And I had classes in Worcester of 24 and 25 kids, and I had classes of 20. The difference between 20 and 24 and 25 may not seem like much. It is the most amazing difference you could ever imagine. And I think it's very, very important. It's also an equity issue. Because if your child who is in a class with 25, he just happens to be, or she happens to be in that class moving through, where other classes move through at 21, there's a difference in the opportunity for those kids. And so what this does is level the playing field for just about every student going through our K through 5 school district. You had a question, Bruce?
Yeah, I was gonna see, does anybody from the committee have any questions specifically?
If there's nothing, I'm just gonna, the current budget proposal, how much allocation is there from, school choice right now?
Right now would be what we budgeted this year, $459,000. What we tried to do is, you know, it's unfortunate we lose that Title I funding. That's just, you know, you hate to wish poverty level to go up to 5%, so you get that $50,000. I certainly don't want that. But it just seems unfair. But in order to do a comparison, we tried to keep the same funding from all funding sources. So it'd be an easy comparison for the community.
As enrollment declines in the school, do you anticipate that the school choice will increase? Or I know we talked a little bit about sort of tipping the scale away from kids who actually live in town.
So school choice is a double-edged sword. I am not, we unfortunately we need X amount of money from school choice because we've come to rely on that funding source. I'm going to come to the committee in April with maybe some other suggestions. But certainly in the lower grades, what we don't want to do is hire 2 teachers, then increase school choice, and then be faced with the same problem of increased class size. What I need to do as superintendent is realize, and the school committee realize, that $459,000 is a big chunk of money to make this budget work. And so how do we balance the needs of the district, allow some students to come to our school district under school choice, but not have an impact on class size? And the only place that really truly happens right now is 9th grade. Now, in our lower grades, you know, when I first arrived here, my first year, I believe there were 6 teachers in every grade level. But the average class size was 130. Our elementary school, our average class size is 100 now because there's a decline in population in most suburban schools. Because, you know, it's just what's happening right now. When this population grew in the 90s, those folks are still living here, but their kids have graduated from college and they're out of our school system, and it's going to take a little bit more time for those populations to grow again. As we move into the middle school and some of these classes move into the middle school, then we can open up discussion about potentially opening up some additional spots. But what What I would say, though, is that our goal should be to just keep it right around where we are now. It would be ideal, it'd be great if we could not have school choice. But we can't possibly fund our school budget without that $459,000. But I want the community to understand something. The average per pupil cost in Sutton is $12,400, which is relatively low compared to like communities. We had that survey done when we compared our district, not a survey, but an audit. We're approximately $1,000 below like communities on average, similar demographics. But in the ideal world, I wouldn't have school choice, because if we're bringing in $5,000 for school choice, but the per pupil expenditure is $12,400, we're losing money here. So we just got to balance that out and recognize that it's a necessary evil. But our first priority to the children and the parents that live in Sutton, and the children of Sutton have to be our first priority. Once they come here in a school choice, they're ours, and we treat them like everybody else. But
It's really dangerous. In prior years, when we talked about trying to wean off of the school choice, you feel the impact for a year. But then if 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we hit financially difficult time, it sort of handcuffs you around the teacher moving. The things we're saying, it's great, we're gonna add more teachers into the lower grades, and we won't have to shuffle them as much. On the other hand, in lean times, the ability to shuffle teachers has really provided a great deal of budget freedom. And if you bring in school choice children, you know, you can end up with just a couple of kids that hamstrings you from being able to do that. So it's every 4 or 5 years we say we need more school choice, or then we get down and say we don't want to do this school choice thing. It's
one year, I mean, when I first got here in 2010, and we laid off 23 professional staff in my first 3 years. One year we did bring in, like, in one class, like 12 kids. And we did that as a necessary evil, because we just didn't have any. I mean, in those years we didn't receive those years we didn't receive any money from the town. We were draining down our revolving accounts just to keep our head above water and minimize the number of folks that. But if you look back now, that limited our flexibility with that particular grade. I still think at that time I probably still did the same thing, because we were really up against it financially. But you know, again, I think our first priority are to the community members, the children that live in this town, the families that live in this town, and then if there is openings and there's a place, that's where we do it.
I do have one item in the budget that I would like the committee to take a look at. And that is the line item for increases for administrative staff, not the superintendent's contract, but the other administrative staff. In the budget, it's set at 3%. The superintendent is getting 2%. The STA is getting 2%. The SESA is getting 2% as well. It's not necessarily about the dollars, because the dollars aren't that great. I think it's more about the principle and the message that it sends. And I'd like the committee to consider having that changed to 2%. I don't understand why administrators should be receiving a bigger increase year over year than everybody else in the school district.
Do you have any comments, Ted, on the thoughts behind that?
Well, I think when you're a building level administrator, you carry much more responsibility than a classroom teacher. Classroom teachers can get an advanced degree, can work toward a lane change and get additional compensation that way. The other thing is, teachers can make money in other ways within the district. You can coach a team. You can run a club. You can make other money. And the other thing that concerns me is that our administrators' salaries, some of them are really bumping up, or teachers' salaries are bumping up close to some of our administrators' salaries. And I have a little bit of an issue with that, where administrators work a 220-day school year. And if you're a guidance counselor and you work 10 extra days, you make more than 2 of our principals. And so I'm trying to balance that. I'm trying to make sure that our administrative staff are being compensated to like area communities, and also to try to make sure that their salaries keep a reasonable distance from a classroom teacher that works 183 days.
So then what we also need to do is look at teacher negotiations.
That'll be 2 years from now.
But
Yep.
I'm just saying, I think that's an important place to also look.
Sure.
Because I think what needs to happen is things need to be fixed across the board. But I think this is a good place to start. I mean, leveling things out, to me, sounds reasonable. It sounds consistent, and I'd love to give everybody raises, but we also don't have it. Our school district is 80% salaries, but we also, in the meantime, need to teach the children. So how do you balance all of that? And that's what becomes the responsibility. And so, to me, I feel it's my responsibility to say, I am not comfortable with it, and I am comfortable with something consistent and across the board at 2%.
And I would say that all those people who fall into that bucket, they all knew what the job was, and the responsibilities were, and the restrictions that came with it for earnings. When they took the job, there was nobody forced to take it. That was their decision, and they're all adults. If that doesn't work anymore, then there's an opportunity for them to go back into the classroom. I don't know, but that is what the job is, and that's what the job pays.
What I'd like, well, it's really, I shouldn't say. This is a decision by this board. I present the budget. It is the committee's responsibility, one of your 3 responsibilities, to approve a budget. What I was going to say was, we're in January. We're going to have to cut this budget. There's no way around. We're going to have to cut money out of this budget and increase funding sources in other ways to get those 2 teaching positions and the curriculum director position. We know that. What I would ask, that we just, before we make those final decisions that you have to vote, we just allow us time to come back to the committee with, like we do every year, we're recommending these cuts, these cuts, these cuts, these cuts, these cuts to the budget. I respect both Kristen and Bruce's position on this. I understand your position on this. And I think there are a lot of people that would understand your position on this.
And just for clarity, it's, if I remember correctly, it's roughly $26,000 difference, 2% versus 3%.
No, I think it's an $8,000 difference or an $8,700 difference between 2% and 3%.
In the budget?
In the budget, I believe the difference between 2 and 3% for administrators, and we're talking about the principals, the business manager, special education director, and Roger Raymond is also in that bucket. Roger's in that bucket, correct? I believe he's in that bucket as well. So, and the reason why I asked to wait is because I think we should have further discussion about this. I think we should talk about Roger Raymond and where Roger Raymond's salary is currently. And should he be restricted to 2% when you look at his level of salary? That's all I'm asking. If the committee decides this is the way you want to go, that's the way we go, and we cut the budget down to 2% for administrators. I'd just like a little bit more time to think through and look at all aspects of the budget.
One of the questions or concerns I have on that, whether it's 2 or 3%, it would be at the superintendent's discretion how that spreads. So while I'm not as worried about the 3% number or the equity, I understand for the comparable number. I do worry that if we have a particular person who's going to get a higher number, so that, you know, somebody says all of the administration got 4 or 5%, when that's because you'll have some discretion around how to allocate that bucket. Yes.
Yes.
I do think it's worth switching that around. Is there a top end on any particular member, and if you're going above that, how do we know what the logic is behind it?
Is that within our purview, but
Well, that's where it gets a little.
that's, I mean, ours is to set the budget. That's,
Right.
I believe that's the superintendent's
That's where it
decision
gets
there.
tough.
So the only way we do that is by bringing that whole bucket in line
Right.
with everything else.
Well, I don't
And
know if you couldn't come up with a line and talk about, I don't want to see any particular salary increase by more than X percent.
But if you set the bucket, the amount that's in the bucket.
Set the budget to 2%, and all of that 2% goes to a specific, I'm not suggesting that would happen. All of that 2% goes to a specific person. Their increase is going to be far greater than 2%.
Agreed, agreed. So
Just-
that's maybe 2% overall.
Just so you know who falls in that bucket, so the difference between 2 and 3% is $8,791. And it's the IT director, facility director, business manager, special education director, the principals in the 4 schools, and the vice principal.
In the IT director, it's 70% of his salary. The town covers 30% of his salary.
The other piece I think that we're sort of missing in this, and that when we go to replace a principal or an IT director or whoever it is, the salary traditionally has been far higher. There is an element of strategy in terms of the continuity of keeping the same staff, keeping their salaries in line with what's available, at least close to where they could go. So if they said, I didn't sign up for this, I signed up for more money and I'm going somewhere else for more money. If we can preempt that without a great deal of spending, I think it's worth doing.
But is $2,000 going to do that?
I don't know, because the final piece I would want to know in a decision like this is, what do comps look like in the region? Historically, we've been able to see that, and I'm sort of flying blind here if we were to decide right now, because I just don't know what comps look like.
well, I struggle with the idea of giving 10 people the opportunity for a higher raise than you do for the remainder of the staff. That's my issue. I truly don't understand the premise of giving essentially management a bigger increase than the staff and the hands-on, the forward-facing folks who are in the trenches every day. I don't understand that. I think it sends a bad message to those people, and there are, to me, they're equally as difficult to replace as these 10 people are. Will,
Agreed.
and I will accept that. I think Roger Raymond, with the knowledge that he has, but that could be a different discussion.
Say all of our administrators. I think that the reason why I think Sutton has been so successful is the continuity of all of our staff, all of our administration. You've had a town manager here for 10 years. That it all comes together. I absolutely understand your point of view. I do.
And here's the other question to ask, is how much staff movement have we really had in the past 3 years, 5 years?
In what regard?
In regard to somebody saying, I'm leaving this district. I'm going to teach somewhere else. I'm going to teach somewhere else because they're gonna pay me more money.
Do you mean for teachers or for
For
administration?
anybody,
for anybody. I mean, it'd be interesting.
Working in Sutton. Now, I taught in Worcester. I was a principal of an elementary school at Tantascwa, by the way. Great experiences. I loved them both. I was a junior high school principal at Tantascwa. If you're a teacher or you're an administrator, this is as good as it gets. This is a great job. This is a great place to work. And so you're not going to have turnover. I believe there's been two people that have left, and they actually left last summer. One moved to Connecticut and down by New York, and the other one took a job in Wachusett because it was less than a mile from their home. So they were commuting from Rutland to Sutton, and it made no sense to take that opportunity. But once staff get here, it's a great place to work. Why would you want to? With that said,
And it's not that I want to lose people, but I also think we're all talking about working within the constraints of our resources. And so every year, there's a known decent-sized shift in what we pay. So perhaps there might be a shift over time as our population of staff ages and then ages out and is no longer here. So that may swing around somewhat. But I'm just concerned about the whole picture. I mean, and it's not just administrative. It's everybody. I want to look at it. I've always wanted to shake this thing up.
It's again, all I'm asking is that in the end, we're going to have to make cuts. I just would like to be a little bit more thoughtful about this. I understand people's point of view, and as we go through the budget process, if this is what's determined that the committee would recommend that I do or that we do, and that's fine, and then I'll make adjustments to salaries as we move forward.
So are these CLA or are they merit or combination or
What's CLA?
cost of living?
Oh,
With the unions, most of our teachers and most of our, so there's only a handful of people not in the union, so those are collectively bargained. But under the administrative contracts, those are all individual contracts. And so they're subject to an annual review and an appropriation within the budget to determine how much they will receive.
and the 2% of the teacher budget is the 2% on the lines plus what I would call COLA. Is that right, or is this 2% total?
What's that?
For the teaching line, we're talking about they're at 2%, that'd be 2%, and then as you mentioned, if anyone's we've reduced the number, but the number of steps and lanes would also add.
Right. So, under the current collective bargaining, for all of our unions, there are steps, there's COLA, there are lane changes. So if you look at the individual budget and you go to an individual line where there's an individual person who's in their 5th year and they just finished their master's degree, they'll get a step, they'll get a lane change, they'll get a COLA. And this is what Paul and I have been talking about for years, and it's disingenuous to say that the STA got a 2% raise next year. It's really on average about 3.5%.
Right, that's why we need to rework
But-
the whole picture.
And that's what we're working on, so that if we limit the number of steps and you get down to 4 steps, then what you're really talking about, because the way education works is on your first day of your 4th year, you get professional teacher status, no matter what. We can debate that as well. However, those are the rules. And so if you're there and everybody's where they need to be, other than getting an advanced degree, whatever we say that raise is, that's what people get. So a 2% would really be much more like a 2%.
And in the last negotiation, we made definite progress towards fewer steps, so that when we said the percentage is X, it was closer to being able to understand that that really was the percentage.
Correct.
That we won't get, what typically happens is somebody says it's 2%, and then you pick 4 teachers who had a phenomenal experience, jumped the right step and the right lane, and they're at 9%. How did that happen, sort of thing?
To be
Did get rid of 3, I think we got rid of 3 steps this past,
Get rid of 5 steps.
5 steps, okay.
But I'd like to point out that of the approximately 120 professional staff members in the STA union, 80 of those 120 are getting 2%. But then there's 40 that are still in the lane change, and that's what bumps it up. And so our goal would be to have, and it makes sense too from a recruiting standpoint. If we're starting teachers at the highest salary, people are going to want to come to Sutton because we pay more up front. We may not pay as much on the other end, because I'm looking at those comps now, but we'll be very attractive. And once you get here, as I said, why would you leave? It's a good place to work.
It does make the comparisons a little bit more difficult.
I'm just going to get some water. We're still in public session.
Yes, sir. I don't know if you want to go out of the hearing part.
Does anybody have anything else? Anybody? No? Then can I have a motion to move out?
Makes a motion to exit the public hearing.
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
South side.
Jerome, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Brendan,
Mark, aye.
Terrific. Thank you. So the next item is to adopt the fiscal year 2020 school budget. Motion, please.
Move to adopt the FY20 school budget in the amount of $17,923,443 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
So we will have discussion about administrative rate. I think just talking about raises in general and proceeding forward for the next 3 to 5 years would be a nice thing to do.
As I said, no matter what, we're not going to be able to make up $200,000 or $180,000. So we're going to have to cut somewhere, and if it's determined that you want to cut it under administration, that's what we'll do.
you go with appropriate, maybe not nice, but appropriate.
Yeah. Yes, appropriate.
I mean, I think the only way you can do it is there has to be a motion to change it and then vote it on, correct?
Yes.
Future agenda item, or?
I think we can do it right on this item right here. So,
Well, what's on the table now, if we approve the budget, it can be decided and voted on later, depending on where we stand.
The way you would do it is you would make a motion to amend, because there's a motion on the
Right.
table. The motion to amend, we would say, can we change the number from 3 to 2%? We'd get somebody to do the math real quick on that line, or we'd accept that. That's the way you
Yeah.
do that.
and Nancy gave us the number, 8271.
No, 87,
87.81.
I'm sorry, I closed
what is it?
8781.
8781.
separate motion, though.
No, it'd be a motion to amend.
Amend.
Because there's a motion on the table that's being considered,
Say
right?
again,
This is-
87 what?
you know,
Okay,
8781, I believe.
is that what it is?
For the purposes of discussion, if we just take the motion to amend to change that number from 3 to 2, perhaps we can see how that goes,
Yeah.
and if we need to know the number after the vote. we can. The other thing I would suggest is, it's a motion to amend, that motion would have to be seconded. You'd discuss that motion, and then it would
Then you
go up
vote
or
on the next
down,
one.
and then we would come back to the budget.
Correct.
I have it. If you need it, I have it.
Okay.
The difference is $8,791.41.
So it's
Make a motion to amend the budget by reducing the administrator's line by that amount.
by 8791. Okay. So I will move to amend the administrator's line reducing it by the 879141, correct? Okay.
Is there a second? There is no second.
So that
So
motion
motion
wouldn't move
fails.
forward, and you fall back to the original motion.
Okay. So then the motion is as made to adopt the fiscal year 2020 budget in the amount of 17,923,433 as presented. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye.
There's a great YouTube video you can look up where the chair is asking for the second and asking, you just can't get the second. It goes downhill from there. Democracy in action is a good thing, but it's a good video. If you're
I did see that.
Next item is superintendent's update.
Okay, so part of the district learning team that came out, I've mentioned before, is the diversity committee at the lower grades in every school. And so they had their first diversity inclusion council event, African Cultural Night, was very, very successful. In the Early Learning Center, Simone Center, they finished their mid-year dibbles, which is the reading assessment. And now the teachers have common planning time where they review that data and readjust their RTI groups to meet the individual needs of students. In the elementary school, they've completed their MAP and DIBBLES assessments as well. The middle school is selling raffle calendars for the trip to Washington, D.C. for April vacation. And Courtney Norton, I'm glad that Mr. Goy had highlighted Courtney Norton. Courtney Norton is a reading specialist in our middle school, and she provided a half-day training for our middle school staff on brain and memory strategies, and she will also be utilized in our lower grades to provide professional development around reading instruction, as we pointed out in the budget. High school students returned from Haiti. They had a very, very successful trip, and I think it's important that we invite them in later in the year to have them come in and make a presentation to this committee.
I was gonna say, there's some interesting Facebook pictures, so
Yeah.
maybe they can do a slideshow.
Yes, yep, and come in and talk about their experience. So diary remind me to make sure I schedule that in. The showcase night at the high school is January 31st. What I like about this is they're also inviting 7th grade parents in. I think it's important that we not wait till 8th grade, but to also bring in 7th grade parents so they know what's coming forward. I will be coming before this committee to look for a pre-K tuition increase when we compared local preschools where significantly lower. We haven't raised our pre-K tuition since I've been here, that I believe. So that's been 9 years. I don't have any update on technology, other than Mr. Durgan has been drawn into the police department at a larger than a 70-30 split at the moment,
With the
but
new building.
with the new building. So he's been spending a great deal of time down there as they get close to crunch time. From the facilities, we've talked about this before. We have a problem with our hot water boiler in our high school. Now, we've talked about in the lower grades, we have one hot water heater that's almost 20 years old that we're going to replace in the capital plan. We have one that's over 10 years old. Our building's been open for 5 years, and we already have a problem with, multiple problems with this. And so I'll provide more information as we get closer, but this water is for the kitchen washing hands. And Roger is working with the general contractor and with this vendor. We need a better approach. Having the same type of equipment coming in is not going to solve the problem because it's going to be no good in 4 or 5 years. We need a much better product so that lasts a reasonable amount of time. They say it's our water. Well, can't disagree more. We just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a water treatment plant, so it is not the water, it's the equipment. So that's something that I'll keep you updated on.
Is there a chance it could come out of the Green Communities grant?
Well, right now we're hoping it's going to come out of the vendor. And so we're working that angle first. And then, I mean, we'll be able to nurse it for a year, but we'd like a long-term plan.
Who's the vendor?
I don't know offhand. I don't know the name of the company. Those are still,
Publicity.
How does it impact the kitchen?
it doesn't, it's fine right now. We're gonna work off of one so that it doesn't affect the kitchen. However, it does, if we use both, it creates rusty water.
Okay.
In the arts, we had the 5th grade band and choral concert on January 16th. The 7th and 8th grade chorus sang the Canadian national anthem as well as our national anthem at the Railers game at the DCU Center on January 18th. And the entire 5th grade will be heading to Mechanics Hall on February 11th for a jazz concert, so that's pretty exciting. Events coming up on January 30th, the district learning team has their meeting on Wednesday night. The showcase is January 31st, and on February 4th, at our school committee meeting, Ryan Fatman and Representative McKenna will be here. Also, tomorrow evening at 5:30, Millbury will be coming in. There's a football meeting to talk about the potential co-op with Millbury. That meeting is so that we can discuss the pros of the Millbury co-op. At the February 4th school committee meeting, that's when we'll have a discussion about this on camera. I think it's vital that for these football families, that they have an opportunity to have a back and forth question and answer with the superintendent, the athletic director, and high school principal. And so what I'm going to recommend is that we got to debate how we do this, because I think what we'll do is move the student update before the public hearing, maybe move Ryan and Joe McKenna before the public hearing, and then allow the football parents to address their concerns. I think it's important that I make a statement that evening, the athletic director makes a statement that evening, so that we get all our cards on the table.
Do we need a bigger venue, or just folding out the doors in advance?
I think if we fold out the doors, you can fit I think you can fit 100 people, I wouldn't say comfortably in here.
And the doors open okay? 'Cause I know there was a problem with them.
Well, I think what we'll have to do,
Set it
Show
up-
the
set it
windows
up ahead of
open.
time.
Yeah, it's gonna get
I
warm in
mean,
here too.
I suppose we could do it at a different venue, but I think you can fit 100 people in here pretty comfortably, and we'll have that open before the meeting, have it set up. But I only think it's fair that if I believe that we should do a Millbury Sutton co-op, that those parents hear what I have to say, hear what the athletic director has to say, allow them to question me, allow me to question them, and just have the back and forth. I think that's what they're looking for. I haven't done it other than with some individuals, because we didn't have all of our ducks in a row. We didn't have any agreements in place, or potential agreements in place. And so now that we have those agreements, they'll have an opportunity to hear from Millbury tomorrow night. I would like and hope that that meeting is very respectful, and that's what that meeting's about. The meeting here on February 4th is their opportunity to make their statements, question me, and so forth.
Tomorrow, just an information gathering for them, they're just
Yes.
there to hear, they're not there to ask anyone.
No, they can ask questions.
Okay,
So like, as an example, my question's going to be, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is the assimilation next year. I think after next year, everything smooths out, but next year, there's 20 seniors on Millbury's football team. And so my question is going to be to Millbury, how do you assimilate all of the kids from Sutton and Douglas, those 4 seniors, those 9 juniors who have participated here? They've been playing certain positions. Some of them play both sides of the ball. So that's a major concern I think many parents have.
Sure.
After that,
Is how are you gonna make it work?
after that, when those 24 seniors leave the program, then everything kind of evens out. But if I was a parent of a senior, I'd be concerned.
Anybody should be concerned, because it's a new venture. So if that's the way we're going, I think it's appropriate that there's an exchange. And so you don't have a moderator, do you?
I do not.
Okay. So you just set the ground
I will
rules
set the
ahead.
ground rules. You know what? As I said earlier, this is a great town. I think that there are passionate people
Which is great.
that, and I was talking to a parent at the basketball game tonight, and he said something to me that is so true. Would we rather have the opposite?
Yeah.
Would we rather have apathy? And so even though, I have my belief and my reasons, it's very important that we listen to those parents,
Absolutely.
hear them out, respect their point of view,
Agreed.
because they're coming at it from a different angle than I am. But that's how this is supposed to work.
Absolutely. Can't have discourse if
And
you have chaos.
I just want people to be respectful of the folks from Millbury, be respectful of me. I need to be respectful of them. And we'll see what happens.
But they all know time, place.
Yeah, where's the actual meeting tomorrow?
The meeting's going to be, I have the meeting scheduled for the team room.
Okay, upstairs.
Is the auditorium available?
So that was originally, we can change it to the auditorium. What I wanted it to be is somewhat a smaller venue so that when you're in the big auditorium, and if 100 parents came, or a total of 100 people came with kids, it's not that intimate.
Right,
It's a very big, yet the cafeteria is not a real intimate setting either.
Yeah.
No.
Whereas the team room, but the problem with the team room is you can fit 80 people in there. So if there's more than 80 people, then that won't work either.
As long as you have a second backup plan, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's far better to have people sitting around like this than have people on different
But-
levels, which is.
What I think is important, though, for everybody to understand, is that tomorrow night's meeting is informational. This is the venue. This is the public venue where people come and voice their agreement and disagreement. It's publicly recorded, and we will engage them in conversation.
The next school committee meeting.
February 4th.
This tomorrow.
A week from today.
It's informational, and it's more receiving information about what
Right.
Millbury has to offer.
And then from that night, it gives those parents an opportunity to digest that information and be able to come back on the 4th with additional questions that they may have or comments that they may have.
Yeah, I think it's important that you have all responsible parties there so that you can field all the appropriate questions. Because my concern is so much misinformation, bad information goes around because the communication wasn't so great to start, for whatever reason. And I think this is a good way to make it right.
Yes.
It's huge.
It's a good way, I think it's a good way to make it right. I think it's extremely late in the game.
Agreed.
And I think that it puts people on this committee
In a bad place.
in a very, very bad place with backs against the wall to make a decision. For those who can't make that meeting tomorrow night to hear all this information, I think it puts the committee, members of the committee that haven't made a decision in a very bad spot.
Can I comment on that?
Certainly.
So obviously, we had to go through a bunch of steps. But there's a real question in my mind about what the role is of the school committee in this situation. Your role is threefold. You hire the superintendent, you set policy, and you approve a budget. We've historically had school committee vote if we adopt a new co-op. But I really, and that's why we do that, because it's historically we've done that. But in my opinion, it's really under the purview of the superintendent to make these decisions, because that is what my job is. And you hire me to look at all of the evidence, to understand the situation fully, and it's to prevent, I may think ultimately what it was is to prevent bias. It's to prevent decisions to be made for the right or wrong reason, and you hold the superintendent accountable for what goes on. I wish the timelines could have been differently. I wish the timelines could have been different. I wish we had more lead time. I wish there was more. But we had to go through a whole process to get all of these approvals to do this. And now we're up against a deadline as well of making that decision, whether we stay with Douglas Sutton or we go to Millbury.
I agree, but my concern is that the two views are so far apart and talking about completely different numbers that to have had that open forum and that meeting weeks ago so that both sides could have figured out and understood where the other was coming from with numbers and issues, and perhaps found some common ground and some agreement, would make it a little bit easier on this committee. And again, we've had the folks in here a couple times, and I know we've all received a ton of emails. And if this is something that isn't within our purview, then thank you for the sleepless nights and the loss of hair. But I mean, it's a bit frustrating that we're getting to the point where our back's against the wall, and if we're going to be asked to make a decision next Monday night, the meeting is coming 6 days. The meeting between the two sides is coming 6 days before that, and I can't. I have a business obligation, and I can't make it, so I can't hear this information. Mm-hmm. That puts me in a very difficult spot to make a decision next Monday night, and I have a problem with that. I think the communication wasn't done on both sides very well at the very beginning, but I think this has festered far too long, and I think this could have been addressed with both sides getting together a lot earlier. So that's all.
And I can appreciate that. I've felt very much the same way. The point that was made in regards to school committee's responsibilities is we hire a superintendent and an athletic director to handle some of these things. And I imagine there were probably points in time when it was speculation. We don't know what the true details were. And I can imagine it's difficult to talk through specifics of something when you don't truly have the details. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night, and I'll share with whatever I got, and maybe we record it. But I'm looking forward to hear, most of us don't have the inside details to how this came about. The intentions, I would really hope and imagine, were good all along. But it comes from both sides. Everybody has their perspective. And it might have been junctures where there wasn't enough information to share. I don't know that. So I'm looking forward to the information I get tomorrow to
But that
kind
could
of
have
have a full
also
view.
been something, because the moment that we start getting the rumors is the best time to sit down and have conversation. Even if it's, hey, we don't have any information, but yeah, we are talking to them, and this is what we've talked about so far. I mean, if we talk about being transparent, this hasn't been transparent. And that's kind of where that's why I said to you,
From your point of view.
coming from my point of view. I mean, like, and then when we've got people here, Christina isn't even there. I could use an expletive right now. It's like, really? So I'm frustrated. If I were a parent, I'd be frustrated. Maybe this is how they feel.
Sure.
I feel left out. As I said, I can't even engage people in conversation about this because I don't even have enough information. And that's not fair to me.
What information don't you have?
I know that we've talked to Millbury. I know that parents have come and have been angry and have questions. I have questions. When did this start? And I realize we got a little timeline, but I want to sit down with Christina. I want to say, all right, you tell me your story from the beginning.
Did you schedule a meeting with her?
No, I've got to sit with her.
Because I know she's offered to talk anytime.
Oh, I know she has, and I need to do that. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot too, Ted, but this.
That's why I get paid
but
for.
I feel like she put us on the spot, and doesn't sit well with me.
So,
I'm sorry, but the objective of tomorrow's meeting is if the Millbury agreement were approved, it's really an opportunity for parents or students
Absolutely.
who might participate to have an understanding of how a Millbury-Sutton collaborative would work.
correct.
So it really is sort of scoped on those questions. I just got worried, we started talking about the entire piece. and
That's all,
tomorrow's
that's what
objective
tomorrow night is.
If it was approved, here's how we would do
Correct.
that. Not a question of, well, what about how we did this last year
No.
with Douglas or anything like that.
That's what
I'm
the
just
fourth is for,
concerned
is
about the
more back
process
and
of
forth.
how we got to where we are now.
And you didn't like the email? Because
No,
I
I
thought the
just-
email was pretty clear with
No,
what transpired.
I didn't like it.
Okay.
I didn't like it. I mean, I have too many, my kids know I'm very nosy. I need to know, and I just feel like,
Kristen, we've made you aware
oh, I know.
for a month now that you could meet with Christina
And I've
to
got to-
answer those questions for
I know.
you and any question that you have.
Right, and I'm planning to do it this week. I mean, unfortunately, work has kept me somewhere else. I do need to make money.
I sent out an email to the entire community to clarify, as I've said 2 years ago. And as I said in that email, for me, it comes down to sustainability of a football program. That's really what it's always boiled down to me. And that's what I said in that email to parents. And I've made that clear to the Friends of Sutton Football when I met with the two people in charge of Friends of Sutton Football. There was no easy, no simple way to do this. 2 years ago, we came right out and said, we're going to change our football program and look for a co-op. And the same thing happened. This year, we did it behind the scenes, you're right, in working through DVC and, MIAA, DVC, and SWICL to first go through the process to see if you can even do it. And so we did keep that under wraps in case it just came back and said, well, that's not even an option. Well, if it's not even an option, then why even talk about it? And so that's how we approached it. We can argue that it was, but over the last several months, we have made it clear that we are looking at this. It's going through a process. That hasn't been a secret. We've had 2 school committee meetings where parents have come in and filled this room and talked about it.
Right, but I don't think, they don't want to talk to someone, they want to talk with someone. We're not the venue for that. It should have been a different venue. That's ultimately what you're trying to do tomorrow night, is that you try,
Nope, different meeting tomorrow night.
so you're not looking for them to ask any questions?
Asking questions of
Right.
what a Millbury co-op would look like, not to have a debate,
No,
about the
but-
pros and cons between
No,
that program
I'm not
and...
saying debate, I'm just looking for basic information. Like I said, this to me should have happened way back. Just basic information, because you get crazy crap flying around.
Sure.
Because,
But Kristen, anything today, any subject with the internet and with social media,
so then we
blows
have,
up.
but it's still it's still a problem. So, something we keep working on. But, I mean, just because it happens doesn't mean.
We met with all the football
should
players
become-
today. They all met with the athletic director. All the football players had an opportunity to ask questions. We are meeting with the parents to update them on what it would look like to be with Millbury. I have sent home 2 communications to parents now. So I don't think there's any mystery that we are seriously looking at a long-term commitment with Millbury. I don't think there's any
No,
surprise
I don't
there.
think there's been a serious mystery that it's been. I don't know. I just think the communication
I-
could have been better.
And, you know, I think you're right, Bruce. I think if I'm sitting one of you folks here, you all have full-time jobs, you work, you do other things, you hire me to, you know, and if we didn't communicate that clearly enough to you guys, I apologize. It wasn't our intent. We're not trying to not be transparent. We're not trying to be underhanded. You know, the other thing I want to say is, I started working with children at 18 years old full-time. To think that, and Mr. McCarthy's been doing this a long time, Christine and Tamala, for anyone to think that we're not looking out for the best interests of the students of Sutton, they're wrong. We are. I think I'm objective. I think I look at all points of view. I think I put myself in the shoes of those parents of juniors and seniors and know that it'll look different next year. But you hire me to be objective. You hire me to look at all sides of this issue and come and recommend to the board what I believe is the best course of action. I have said twice now, I said once at this school committee meeting, very clearly that if it was approved by MIAA, that I would come to this board and recommend that we go with Millbury based on some of the facts that I laid out in the letter today. I said that on television, I said it here. There's no mystery here. And I'm basing that on the fact that the numbers that I have, and I said in the letter, I see 27, maybe 30 football players next year in Sutton. And I see Douglas not having any students, any football players going forward based on the information I received from the Douglas High School principal. And so that's what I'm looking at. And I want our kids in Sutton, by the way, football's not going away. I want our kids in Sutton to have the best opportunity, the best football opportunity available to them. And that's what's going to drive my recommendation, my decision to this board.
And I think that's appropriate, but I just think the lack of communication at the lower levels has just created an issue.
I think things probably could have been handled better in this situation. However, I have full expectations of yourself, of our athletic director, our principals, that they are looking for opportunities at any
Right.
turn
Right,
to
and
try
I've-
to do things. And we've had things brought to us afterwards that, hey, we're going to have a girls lacrosse co-op with Hopkinton or something like that. I appreciate that. I don't need to know that from the ground up. I love hearing it. But I think we have to consider that too. They look for the opportunities and then it's brought to the district.
Right, and that's the important thing, is I've never said that you're not looking. It's none of what you've mentioned. To me, it's just communication. And it's communication on every front. That's
I
what I say.
felt in the loop. I felt like this has gotten an appropriate amount of time. I don't feel uncomfortable with the 4th being able to actually have this on the agenda and talk about it.
Are you folks able to attend tomorrow?
Yeah,
don't
I guess I'm going.
intend to. I don't have a student or a child who's going to
I don't
or
either, but-
considering the
I
Millbury
think maybe,
program.
are you still gonna?
Yeah, I'll
we're
be
gonna
there.
try to go,
What time did you say, 5:30?
5:30, and we're having a 5:30, and because we've had to accommodate Millbury. They have to be out of there by 6:30, so we want to make sure that there was a plenty of time for parents to ask questions and answer any questions. They're going to talk through some things, and then the parents will have an opportunity, players will have an opportunity to ask questions.
Right, which is, like I said, this informational session, good. Should there have been other ones? Yes. So I think we just need to, once this is all over, reassess how things went. That's,
Anything else in your update?
I do not have anything else.
Is there any new business agenda items or action items? Hearing none?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
I,
You know what? There is
I'm
nothing
sorry.
worse than eating these lozenges.
Thank
no,
you guys
well,
for
I've
attending.
tried not